Our second panel today is about decoding the future of materials, which is what we're here to do, and how we can address waste and explore circular systems and design with nature. To discuss these ideas, we've assembled a terrific panel. We have Debbie Shakespeare, Senior Director for Compliance and Sustainability at Avery Dennison, which is a leading garment labeling company. You know when you have the labels? That's them. Yan Chan, Director of Business Development for the HongKong Research Institute in Textile Apparel, or HKRITA for short. Carole Collet, Central St. Martin's LVMH Director for Sustainable Innovation, which includes that incubator they have there called Maison Zero, which is really cool. And Helene Steiner, a designer and engineer who co-founded Opencell, a bio-village in London that provides affordable lab space for startups. So let's welcome them, and we'll have a nice chat.
I'm going to start with Debbie. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about Avery Dennison, what you all do? I mean, everything we buy and wear has a label in it, so can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, from the previous panel, I'm a little bit nervous. So I work for one of those big corporations. We're a $7.5 billion business. We're split up over 3 divisions. I work for the apparel division, believe it or not, $1.5 billion worth of labeling just in apparel. The broader organisation, we really think of ourselves as a material science company. So when you think about labels that go on products, that's our space. So you're touching one of our products every single day, from when you wake up in the morning, your shampoo bottle, through to the consumer goods in your kitchen. We know all about sustainability and the disruption it's causing based on the products that we supply. Founded in 1935 by a guy who developed the patent to produce stamps and has grown exponentially from there.
Very cool. And what are some of the innovations that Avery Dennison has come up with to combat waste and promote circularity?
Yeah, so Avery Dennison, when we think about sustainability, we think about it across 3 areas, and we've got 3 big commitments. The first one is to innovate to support the circular economy. The second one is to reduce our environmental impact. And the third one is around being a force for good, making sure that everybody's treated fairly in our supply chain. So when we design products, we really think about how can we incorporate circularity. And that circularity could either be from the raw materials that we use in the products that we design, or then how you enable circularity on the backside of it through either technologies like blockchain, RFID, or then on the material side, really looking at different raw materials or eliminating raw materials from our products.
Now, you all were doing this really cool project you explained to me with Plastic Bank.
Yes.
Can you tell us first what Plastic Bank is and then what you're doing with it?
Yeah, so Plastic Bank is an organisation that specialises in collecting plastic bottles before they hit the oceans. So when you think about plastic pollution in the most impoverished parts of the world, they work and set up recycle centres for people to go and collect this waste, bring the waste back before it hits the water, and then turn it back into products. What's so great is that as a company, we had a patent awarded to us to take a step back. So back before everybody was talking about sustainability in the early 2000s, we developed the first yarn that was fully recycled. We worked with a yarn company to do it, and we filed a patent for recycled labels. You know, amazingly, we got awarded with it back in 2017, and it put us in a position that we were the industry leader with a patent for recycled labels. You know, we could make 2 choices, and we made the right one, which was that we license that fee, and then that fee that we collect, we donate it to the Plastic Bank organisation to support their recycle centres. But then what we're more excited about is that we've now been able to take that waste, turn it back into yarn, and put it back into labels again. So it's that whole circularity and the story of circularity that we're aiming to solve.
Great. Now, do you have some of these products on display here?
We do. We'd love to see you. We brought along 10 products that we believe really promote circularity in the apparel industry. We used them and showcased them at Copenhagen last year. And it ranges from the plastic bound products through to transit packaging for online business, the items that can be recycled, through to the blockchain technology that we developed earlier in the year.
Now, one of the other things that's come up with labeling that I'm personally very interested in is the role of labeling in circularity and recycling. I mean, do we need legislation? How do we make, the industry more transparent through labeling? And I think you even told me the UN's working on this.
Yeah, there are a couple of groups that are looking at different areas. And since I spoke to you, actually, the American Apparel and Footwear Association are starting to look at it. So when you look at the labeling in your clothing, it's going to tell you how to wash your clothes, and it's going to tell you what they're made of, and it's going to tell you where it's made. Well, I think the industry's moved on since the 1990s when that legislation was put in. So really looking at how can your label that stays with your garment for life really tell you more about that product. So it's got the capability to tell you how your garments were made, where they were made, what the environmental footprint was, the impact that you've had on people's lives from where you chose to buy them. So it's not legislation now, but there's a group, and I believe actually it's on the panel today about 3 o'clock. Maria Theresa will be talking about a pilot that's going on with the UN that really talks about traceability and transparency in the apparel supply chains.
Very cool. Now, Yan.
Hi.
Hi. HongKong RITA.
All right.
What is HongKong RITA, and can you also explain what G to G is?
Right. So HongKong RITA, we call it like RITA, but our long name is HongKong Research Institute of Textile Apparel. So you can easily interpret like it's a applied research center for mainly focusing on textile and apparel. So what we do is we're lucky enough, we actually got the funding, operation fully funded by the Hong Kong government. So we are actually here to take risks. We actually do a lot of research. We have our researchers, but at the same time, we actually partner with global universities or research organizations to help us focusing on particular problems, solutions, or new ideas. So we actually apply back to the industry. We are not just only issuing papers, proving the concept, but we are actually applying in industry. So what we actually normally partner with not only university, put the academic back to the industry. We work with all the stakeholders along the industry. So what we actually normally do is we work with the brands, we work with the manufacturers to actually make really things happen. So you actually point out the example is G2G. We call it garment to garment. So that's a particular system that we developed. It's about using the old garment, the post-consumer garment, convert back to the new garment. So the industry mainly thinking about scale things up, but we try to scale things down. Why? Not but on this project only. Why we are doing this? Because we want to actually the consumer understand and is a education tools, not only for the normal customers and also the academic, even the young kids understand they can be part of it. What is it about is we use a whole system, only 8 steps inside. We collect the used garment and then we sanitize it. We open it up back to the fibers, and then the fiber can be spun back to the yarn and then knitted in the sweater or sweater-related accessories. That whole system can able to fit in for the container. And then we can ship anywhere in the world. But that particular first prototype of this kind of the system, we located in one of the retail space in Hong Kong. And if you have chance, come to Hong Kong, we will show you the system. We also have a booth that if you want to have a look, that we can show you. So the whole system is taking about a couple hours or 2 days to actually process the whole garment. So the customer can actually see it and they can actually understand, they can recycle their own garment, and then they can actually see the whole process, the upcycling process in front of them. So they can be definitely part of it. And another thing is a lot of people are actually really concerned about the impurities or how clean the garments can be. We have 2 steps of centralize the garment, the materials, so we can use it back to the customer actually can really feel comfortable of wearing back.
Right. Now you talked to me about a garment-to-garment manufacturing center that you all are creating in a container ship.
Sorry?
in a container ship?
The container ship,
The
yeah.
container ship.
That's right, yeah.
Now, what is that about? Like a container ship that's going to go...
Anywhere in the world. So like a very complex city like Hong Kong, we can cater that. And we also try to deliver message to the industry, cover different part of the world, part of the market segment. So we want to actually let people understand. So that container concept is we can actually bring the whole system in the container and they can ship anywhere in the world. So hopefully we can you guys will see it very soon in Europe.
And then you also have a new project with an American fast fashion brand and a Denim Project in the works. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, that's another project that we just started. We actually haven't we have primary study to proof of concept is actually workable. So we are scaling that up right now as we're moving the indigo dye from the denim materials, and then we can recycle the material back to the industry, mainly back to the denim or actually related textiles. Yeah.
Very cool. Now, Carole, I say that like a French person. Carole, tell us about LVMH Maison Zero.
So we set up a formal partnership with LVMH back in 2017 now. We've had a long-term relationship with them, but we wanted to really look at addressing sustainable innovation specifically. So we call it Maison Zero. LVMH has about 75 brands or 75 maisons. So the idea is that Maison Zero becomes the design-led sustainable innovation program.
And it's ground zero.
And it's ground zero. It's
and
how
zero
can we
waste.
Restart and rethink. So what we do is a whole range of activities that really place design at the heart of sustainable innovation. We very much believe that we can achieve change and we can transition to a more circular economy or more regenerative economy through design. I think about 15 years ago, there was a quote that was going around quite a lot, that came from the EU originally, that said that 80% of the environmental impact of a product is specified at the design stage. So as designers, we really are responsible for a lot of the impact down the chain. So it's not just manufacturers or supply chain.
And not knowingly. They don't realize it.
Well, they are now. The new generation of designers we're educating are very much informed. So the ambition of this program was to really push sustainability in the curriculum across disciplines. So not just fashion textiles. We work with architecture, with products. But we also wanted to share some of these innovations. So we have symposiums. Our last conference was at the Design Museum a year ago. We've had an exhibition for the London Design Festival called Designing in Turbulent Times that showcased about 30 projects where design actually triggered a sustainable innovation. We've also set up what we call the Maison Zero Green Trail, which is at our degree show time.
That was I was going to ask you, the Green Trail.
The Green Trail is, we have an exhibition at the end of year in June every year that showcases all our final year projects. And we've decided to identify the best of sustainable innovation. So they're nominated by our course teams. And then with LVMH, we have a jury and we actually award the 5 best sustainable innovation. And some of these are visible in the Open Innovation
here,
Lab.
right?
It's actually here. And we do also R&D projects. We do students project with the Maison. We've just done a project called Future Life with our fashion BA course and with the LVMH environment team.
Now, how are students embracing Maison Zero and all that you all are promoting there? Is it like everyone's favorite course, the mad scientist laboratory? They all just want to be in there with Dr. Frankenstein coming up with cool new things.
It's not a course, Maison Zero. It's a program where we interfere with different courses. But what we did was, one of the key output of last year, we set up a new master's program, a master's in biodesign, which is the first in the world. Which is really where we look at integrating biomimicry principles, biology. So we have now a grow lab, so we can actually teach biological protocols to our students, and then they might go and see Helene later. But we've set up the first MA Biodesign, and Maison Zero is really keen to look at innovation in the field of design. And biodesign is one of the leading emerging design fields that really can push the boundaries of sustainability.
How important are students in the sustainability movement, in your opinion?
So at college, they're amazing. They're absolutely driven. They have been involved with Extinction Rebellion last year. We now have a climate assembly. We have our head of college, Jeremy Till, has now been appointed Vice Chancellor for Climate Emergency at UAL. So we do a lot of talks, we do a lot of conversation with our students to look at how we can review our practice. Quite often we criticize industry for not doing the right thing, but I think we need to be quite self-critical of education. How come 20 years ago designers were not trained to learn in relation to sustainability? Actually, at Centre St. Martin's, we did it with the Textile Futures program, but it wasn't, general. It was really kind of like an added kind of plug-in, if you want. And in the past 3 years, we've now really revisited our programs to really embed sustainability as a core value to what we teach across courses, which means the next generation of designers will really have the know-how that they need to really push this.
Right. Now, Helena.
Helena.
I said it like a French person. I got Carole, right?
I'm happy with any version of it.
This naturally, students who are learning how to change the world, and then bring us to Opencell. Because what do they do when they get out of school? Well, I guess they can call you, right? Can you tell us about Opencell?
Yeah, so I guess we are quite unusual space. We are a 70 shipping container campus, but the majority of the shipping containers are actually transformed into biolaboratories. And the residents that are on this campus are all early stage companies that tackle different challenges quite often when it comes to sustainability, not only when it comes to the environmental one, but what all combines those companies, they're actually working with living organisms. So they need the biolaboratories to really work with them. We have, for example, companies that look into how they can make personal therapeutics to really help people to cure cancer. So it also can go in a much more kind of life science direction. But we really have a big push in the last years of companies who really look into using living organisms to make more sustainable materials. So we have people who use, for example, mycelium to look into insulation materials that are not only more sustainable, but also actually have better technical properties. But we really see an incredible push, particularly from the fashion and textile industry in the last years as well. So we host all of them. And I guess what I have to highlight there, that it is something fairly new. So in the past, biology and biology labs particularly were reserved for scientific institutions. So they used to be kind of like for pharmaceuticals, like pills and needles.
Proprietary. They owned what they did.
Exactly.
And kept it to themselves.
But we really see a change here. So it's not only the PhDs and the scientists that are joining the field. You really have like people from all sorts of different backgrounds joining in and work together on those solutions.
And is that how, so where did the name come from, Opencell? Is that where the name, that it's open?
It has two reasons. One thing is, like, for us, the most important material is DNA, what is basically the program of life, what is inside the cell. So that's why Opencell. But the other thing is also we are huge supporters of open source. So we open source quite a lot of the protocols that people can replicate our innovations.
Do we have some materials that have come out of Opencell? What can you talk about that's been born there?
So we have an incredible open residency program as well. So if you're a really early stage company, you don't really know how you build your business yet, or kind of want to test out the idea, you can come for 6 months and join us at Opencell, and you get all the facilities for free. And we have incredible companies coming out of that. So from our first cohort, you see Alice Potts, who turned sweat into crystals. We have Piero D'Angelo here, who found another way how do you use bacteria to produce pigments, but actually slime mold to make these beautiful yellow shadows. But we have also Post-Carbon here today, who will actually speak in the next session, way better than me, about the technology. But they're looking really in a live coating to do photosynthesis, but also use bacteria to produce different colors for pigments.
That's really cool. I've seen that. I've seen that at work when she was doing her work in Boston. And 3D printing too, right? Isn't there some experimentation in 3D printing going on there?
I think we don't have our 3D printing here, but we have a company who actually 3D prints mycelium, so they can make products out of it. But we also have Aurélie here, who uses actually abandoned textile and then uses mycelium to make mycelium leather. So to really look in how we could make them roll on roll.
Very cool. And all this is on display here at your booth. Great. So let's talk about the theme of our talk, which is how your companies or your work address waste or explore circularity or design with nature. Now, Helena, Elena said, so designing with waste, for example, or designing with nature, like mycelium. And what about the idea of circularity?
I mean, the beauty of nature, it kind of is an ecosystem, so there's often circularity built in it. You know, there's life and there's death, so it's beneficial there. But what is quite exciting that many of our companies really have as a goal the sustainability aspect of it. So we have the company was mentioning about the 3D printing, the mycelium. What they actually did, they partnered with 15 coffee shops in the local borough around us and actually collect the coffee cups that I also see around here. And despite that, you know, people say we can recycle them, it's just too cost intensive and energy intensive. So they actually make them into a paste, what is the substrate for the 3D printing, and that is also then what the mycelium actually consumes. So there's really a circularity built in, and those products actually also get back into the coffee stores where the waste originally came from. So we have many companies who actually look in those kind of systems.
Very cool. And Carole, tell me about how you all are exploring circularity at Maison Zero and what the kids are doing there to think that way.
So we do explore all of this, upcycling waste, circular design, designing not with nature but for nature. I think that's an important distinction. And you can see here, for instance, in the Innovation Lab, you have the product from Natalie Spencer, who looked at revisiting a traditional craft, which is making textile yarn with pineapple fibers that come from the head of the pineapple. And what was really interesting in her proposition was to look at particularly a sort of urban waste. So we don't grow pineapples here, but we have a juicing industry, the food industry, with a huge amount of waste in terms of pineapple heads. So she was really looking at a sort of urban-based circular system that could be reusing waste from the juice and food industry that actually could become a new textiles. So the idea of looking at local waste, so it's not just circular, because if you do circular but you transport your material around the world, there's a problem there too. Right. So looking at local waste and to develop a circular local economy, I think is also really important.
Thinking local, exactly. It's one of the things I write in my book about how can we apply the local vor movement in the food industry to the fashion industry, and we have to come up with a term. If someone's really witty, we need the local vor version in fashion. I haven't figured it out yet, but keeping it close.
But I think that's really important because there's a real buzz around circular economy now. But circular economy can be circular, but not be very sustainable, depending on how you do it. And so we always have to have that sort of critique. And I think for me, there's two things I wanted to say in relation to your question. There's the fact that actually we need to move beyond circular design. I know we're already struggling to get there, but we need to move into regenerative design. So the idea is that instead of doing less bad and cutting down on our emission or pollution streams, the idea is to actually use design to regenerate our soil, to regenerate our communities, to repair what we have damaged in the past 100 years.
Absolutely.
And that's where we need to shift to. And the other point I wanted to make was designing with nature is the problem. We have designed with nature. This is part of our history as a species. But in the past 100 years, since, even since the Industrial Revolution, we have overexploited our natural system to the point of no return. We've now entered the sixth extinction in terms of biodiversity, triggered by us humans, because we have considered nature as a limitless resource where we can take as much as we want and we can dump toxic waste as much as we want. So I think the shift, and it's a mindset, sustainability is a mindset. I think what we need to do is shift from designing with nature to designing for nature. We are part of nature, and if we design systems that are toxic for nature, they're toxic for us too. So for me, looking into biomimicry and permaculture models and how that can inform design principles is really where we should go.
Absolutely. And quickly, because we're going to move on to questions, Avery Dennison's doing some very cool things in this area. Can you talk a little bit about them?
I can. We joined the Alan MacArthur Foundation this year. We joined the CE100, and it was a great opportunity for us to really think about how we need to do things differently. We've always had public goals around making sure that our waste doesn't go into landfill and committing publicly around the products that we use, that they're going to get reused back in our products again. So that's always been there. But in joining the foundation, it's really made us realise that you're much stronger in working across industry. Again, we generally focus on the apparel industry. Well, actually, the solutions sometimes aren't in the apparel industry. If you partner with other organisations in other areas, you find solutions to problems that well, you didn't know they were problems, but you find out that they're problems, and you can really work together to fix them. So I think that's one of the things that we've really found interesting, and is that external partnership and how it challenges you to think not just apparel focused, the whole broad industry and sustainability at whole.
Do you want to add to that, Yan?
Yeah, we also actually partner with some like brand or manufacturers. We collect the used textiles garment, and then we recycle back. Some technology that we develop is mainly focusing on that, as we separate the materials in order to easy to recycle back. Like for example, cotton and polyester is actually hard to recycle. So we separate them, and polyester can be reused because it's like not affecting it at all. But then the cotton we recycle back as a cellulosic fiber, but the cellulosic powder in a powder form. So that powder actually we can use it back like to viscose rayon, that kind of thing. But then we also actually apply that new technology. We modify the molecule of the cellulosic fibers and become a super absorbency fiber, the powder that use it back on growing the cotton, because cotton is actually using a lot of like water, but then because of the extreme weather right now, it's hard to control. So we actually can like retain the water like 30 times more than they actually used to be. Then we can actually easily and gradually release the water when they grow the cotton. So it's actually good that use the cotton waste, convert back to cellulosic and grow it in the fall. Yeah.
Great. Now we're going to take questions.
Hello. I have a question which came really from what Debbie was talking about. How important do you all feel protecting things like patents, designs and trademarks is in encouraging sustainability?
That's a good question. Yes. That proprietary thing that we were talking about that she's banished at Opencell.
I think it's a really interesting conversation. And it's a hard conversation because as companies, you invest a lot of money to come up with new innovations, and you really want to be able to, you work for a business that creates something, you're doing it because you want to generate purpose, you want to generate revenues, but at the same time, all of us want to create transparency within our supply chain. So I think it's important to develop new technology. With that goes with patents. As an industry, we're not great at patent recognition and patent support, but then how you balance that with the complete traceability and visibility that every single consumer wants in the supply chain is a really hard debate. And I know it's a bit of a cop-out, but it's kind of tough to come up with what the right answer is. I say we try and be transparent with our supply chain to our customers. Well, we're always transparent in our supply chain to our customers so they can see it. But to the general public, I think that's when it starts to get a little bit more difficult, and that's where we need to get to as an industry. It does need to be completely visible to every consumer.
That's a great question. Is there another one?
Question to Debbie. If there's recycled labels in clothes, in fashion, how to go for the next step? Shouldn't we better have non-recycled labels, but natural materials, so the garments could be recycled altogether? So we still have to cut out those recycled labels. Still plastic in.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and that's exactly what the AAFA, American Apparel and Footwear Association, are looking at. The debate around, should it be a physical label that sits in your garment, or should it be some sort of digital trigger? Because again, a lot of innovation going on in digital triggers. It doesn't have to be a physical label.
Something like a QR code?
Like a QR code, RFID, yarns, RFID, lots and lots of technology that's going on. I think the big debate now is around...
Do we want to do our laundry with our phone in our hand?
And that's the debate, is that there's a generation of people that probably aren't ready to do it that way.
It's hard enough to get my husband to read the label to begin with and not put things in the hot that should be in the cold.
But I'm with you. I'd say from an industry point of view, we're talking about it now to the point of going and lobbying Congress. That's where we are. Times are changing.
I think the future of labeling is really fascinating, and it's going to change. It's going to change big, kind of like food labeling has. One more question, maybe?
So as designers, should we, given that there are so many issues in the world in terms of sustainability, environment, social, etc., should we be prioritizing the issues that are most pressing to the world, like water depletion, climate change, rather than say plastics in the ocean? Because the worry is that, for example, a focus on plastics actually may not be the most helpful. So there is a purpose to plastics, like bottled water. If you use kind of something else, it's just more kind of energy intensive, etc. So yeah, that's my question. Should we be prioritizing in our design process?
That's a good one. Anyone want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one. I mean, you gave the example of if we should focus on climate change or are they more pressing. Climate change is an accumulation of the problems we caused. And I think what is best to do if you have a skill set and if you're in an industry to act in benefit of kind of like producing a solution to the bigger problem. I think a problem is like generalizing a problem. You will not come to an actual solution. So I think we should actually narrow down even more where the problems are and work on them very well.
So I figured out how this works. We have a great question up top. What is the #1 fabric, ladies, that ticks all the boxes for the future of sustainable and conscious fashion? Do you have a favorite? One that goes like, yeah. Your favorite fabric. One fabric, #1, that just is like, it's recyclable, it's sustainable, it's compostable, it's washable, it's wearable, it's sexy,
Maybe I actually answer first. For myself, be honest, I think when you actually choose the materials, that can last longer. And also actually think about what's the second life or further lives about it. Because right now, sustainability, actually finding solution of recycling things, of course, definitely actually good. But at the same time, actually being a single individuals, we can actually think about what we can actually do more about our own, materials that use not only like the textile fashions that like you consume every single day, but like, the towels, like, the soft materials that you use at home that, you don't need to actually think about how to actually recycle it on it, but at the same time, how to actually, prolong the cycle of it as well. Yeah.
What about one that kept coming up when I was doing my book research was, of course, hemp. Lots of people talked about hemp. And then a lot of people talked about flax, meaning going back to linen, which is one of the original fabrics. We sort of have those 4 or 5 original. We had linen, cotton, wool, silk, and now we have hemp. And flax seemed to be, it ticked a lot of boxes because it was fed with rainwater, it grows in poor soil, it grows in, easily, it's not expensive or it doesn't take a lot of chemicals to process. The only thing I guess is that it wrinkles. But if you embrace the wrinkle, why not,
That's
right?
the beauty of it.
Carole, do you have anything coming out of Maison Zero or that your kids talk about that they just love?
I think the best fabric may be coming in the next few years. I think it's never black and white. It's never that this is the best fabric. It depends where it's used, how it's used. And so the locality, the purpose, and the application do matter. I don't see there's a black and white to this,
right.
Sadly, because it's a very common question. But I think if you look at climate change will impact our agricultural models. So when we grow, whether it's linen or cotton, that might be impacted. We need to really look into both the natural supply chain, the regenerated and the synthetic, and the new fibers coming, the biosynthetics that come from the biotech industry, may in the end be a better solution. We don't know yet. They haven't been commercialized at a scale at which we can do an LCA, but I think they may be coming. They may not exist yet.
Right. I'm personally a big fan of organic cotton. I think it just feels really good on the skin.
Conventional cotton is a disaster for the planet.
Conventional, yes, but beautiful organic cotton.
Organic cotton is better, but it's a monoculture.
Yeah, but
Not the
organic
best
cotton,
for
a good organic
biodiversity.
cotton shirt, and then when it wears out, I can put it on my rose bushes and fertilize them. So, and then we have, how much do consumers care about sustainability? in terms of it affecting whether they buy a product or not. I'm not sure if that's a question for our panel.
Yeah,
I mean, you might have a sense of it because of the labeling issues.
Yeah, so kind of from our business, how we work is that we sell to all of the big apparel brands. You know, you name them, we're supplying them. You know, brands do what their customers want, and when we look at all of our customers, when they come to us, they've all got sustainability requirements. They're not doing that just because they want to have them. They're doing that because consumers really care for it. In all the studies that I've seen, every consumer says that, yes, they're interested in sustainability in clothing. The big question comes is that nobody's prepared to pay for it. And I think that's the realization that we need to address as an industry, is that everybody wants it, but it's got to come from somewhere. And how's that going to happen?
Right. And then I think we'll take one more from the wall. I like reading from the wall. And it's this last one. Oh, it's not last anymore, but... what is the most important factor in design for sustainability, do you think? Longevity, end of life, or for manufacturing processes? What do we think is the most important if you're coming up with a new product, a new fabric, a new way of processing stuff? Are we thinking about how it breaks down? Are we thinking about how long it'll last? Or all those part of it?
I think the most important thing is that sustainability is built in at the design stage, not as an afterthought, but as a driver of the design concept.
And that's what is the focus here, and why these fabrics are so important down in the Innovation Hub that you need to go see and check out.
For me, I completely agree. And when you think about a garment, if you take it down to scope 3, you know, you think about what your greenhouse gas footprint is. You're thinking about all of that. I think that's where, as an industry, we really need to get to is what's the overall greenhouse gas footprint of a product. That includes your manufacturing, it includes your design, it includes the end of life, it includes how long it's being used for. So for me, if I was asked that, it's your greenhouse gas impact, because it covers everything.
Great.
If I may add, I think the other thing to say, if there is any designers in the audience, is to also carefully pick who you want to work with. Because not every company is there pushing the field. And some companies are doing very, very well. I mean, that's partly why we're working with LVMH. But we have a choice as designers to choose who do we want to work with, and to make sure that actually we are part of the solution as opposed to endorse further problems.
Exactly. And that's why this Expo is so important. I mean, when I first discovered Nina 2 years ago while working on my book, and she had me in after the Expo and had the racks and racks of fabrics in there, and I picked one up and it smelled like a pie, like a home-baked pie. And I'm like, what? She goes, well, it's made of rhubarb. I'm like, oh, it is a pie. And I kind of love the idea that you can have, you know, orange refuse silk and pineapple weave fabrics and rhubarb pie leather, and that's what the future of materials is so interesting, and what you all are either crafting or labeling or pushing people to discover or create is so important. So we're going to break this up now. Have a great look around the Innovation Hub. Remember, we have a books table, so come on and buy books. We have paperbacks, hardbacks, whatever you want, if you want to learn more about this too, because I profile Nina in the book. And thank you so much for coming.